Is it okay to illegally download movies from the internet? Should you tell your parents about that thing you did? Should marijuana be legalized? It's questions like these that make us think about our values. Today on Smash Course TOK, we'll look at the limitations of moral reasoning and all things ethics. Moral reasoning is difficult because deciding whether something is right or wrong is more difficult than me deciding whether or not I like this orange. The taste of the orange is reason enough for my liking. Value judgments, on the other hand, are expected to be backed by evidence. Oftentimes, this evidence is based on emotions as a way of knowing, a gut feeling that something is right or wrong. Another basis for moral reasoning is commonly agreed upon moral principles. But where do these principles come from? And how broadly are they agreed upon? Moral relativism, the belief that there are no universal values, but that our values are determined by the society in which we grow up. Ethics and morality are derived from words that originally meant custom. So moral values can be simply viewed as customs like noodle slurping in China is polite, kissing both cheeks is a greeting in France, and some burying their dead while others cremate them. There are several arguments for and against moral relativism. One of these is the diversity argument. This says that there are no objective moral values and that the diversity of practices in history, like killing adulterers, burning widows on funeral pyres, slaughtering prisoners by ripping their hearts out, since the people doing them do not find them immoral, some conclude that it means morality is in the eye of the beholder. Another argument is the lack of foundations argument, that since we can't use sense perception because we can't see values, and we can't always use reason since there isn't always a logical way to make conclusions about ethics. There are, of course, also arguments against moral relativism, such as that there are core values accepted by all cultures across time and space, since there are similar needs and desires in all cultures. There's also evidence in the way that most societies, from the time of Hammurabi's Code in 1754 BCE. The second argument against relativism is that we can justify values and skepticism about morals, like is it wrong to inflict suffering on other people, which is something that laws can cover and inhibit. Self-interest theory is the claim that human beings are universally selfish. The definitional argument argues that no matter what you choose, you're being selfish. This is because even if you do something that seems selfless, you're still doing it because you want to, making it a selfish. By acting selflessly and helping others, we feel good, making it a selfish act. When you help people, you get a rush of happy hormones, such as serotonin and endorphins, and these hormones, of course, boost your mood and energy. So by doing these selfless acts and feeling good because of them, they're no longer selfless because they made you feel good. For example, a cheerleader mom in Texas plotted the murder of the mother of her daughter's junior high school cheerleading rival. This mother did it because her daughter's success would make her proud and might even help her bring up her own standing in the social community. Her act may seem selfless as it was for her daughter's benefit, but actually it would help her as well. People who criticize this argument claim that getting a good feeling from doing something selfish does not automatically make that act selfish. There are some situations where we do not actively receive anything for our behaviors, and those are truly selfless acts. The fear of punishment argument states that people only do good things because they are scared of the punishment from doing bad things. The fear of fine, imprisonment, and death motivate people to be kind and follow the law. For example, if a group of your friends were going off to rob a bank, would you join them? This argument claims that you wouldn't because you fear of being arrested and getting in trouble. However, not all good behavior is motivated by fear of punishment. There are acts, such as giving to a homeless person, which would not receive punishment if not done. Let's move on to some other theories of ethics. For example, the religious theory of ethics. Religious ethics usually stem from value systems, and the ethics are determined by the interpretation of religious texts. I say interpretation because they aren't necessarily always consistent with the text as it was originally written. And generally there's a promise of some reward if you follow the rules set by the text and some sort of eternal punishment if you don't. Largely they're concerned with what happens to us after we die. It's less so an idea that our time on earth will be impacted so much as what we do after we're alive that will be impacted. Of course, then there's theories of ethics that are based on duty, which are similar in that they're about doing what's right and sort of following by a code of rules. However, you do it not because of any deity, but because you think it's the right thing to do, regardless of anything else. It is similar to religion because it's meant to be followed because it is what's right. And generally speaking, if someone has a sort of a moral duty or feels like they do, they will see it as the objectively correct option, that this is the only way that a person can and should behave in society if they want to be a good person. And of course, the main difference is that if you're simply just doing what you think is right based on duty, you aren't necessarily assuming that anything good will happen to you if you do it. You're just doing it because you can't see anything else, any sort of other way of acting being good. And now, let's move on to the mystery document. Alright, so now let's do the mystery document. Where so this is the pen, you know how this all works if you've seen the show before. Without, there's this, not only are moral laws together with their principles essentially different from all practical knowledge involving anything empirical, but all moral philosophy rests solely on its pure or non-empirical part. Its application to human beings doesn't depend on knowledge of any facts about them, anthropology. It gives them, as rational beings, a priori laws, ones that are valid whatever the empirical circumstances may be. Admittedly, experience comes into the story in a certain way because these laws require the power of judgment that has been sharpened by experience, partly in order to pick out cases where the laws apply, and partly to let the laws get into the person's will and show that they are to be acted upon. Alright, so who wrote this? Well, it's old sounding, it's definitely about morals and ethics and all of that. I'm gonna guess Immanuel Kant. Surprise, it is Immanuel Kant. Alright, now let's talk more about Immanuel Kant. His arguments are along the themes of value and dignity, and that humans are important because of their agency, that we are unlike anything else because of our ability to choose, to reason, things of that nature, and therefore we should hold ourselves to a higher standard than we would hold an animal. His writings usually focus on the importance of motives, of doing what's right because it's right, and not because you benefit. So essentially supporting the idea that you should be selfless, and that if you're being selfless only because it actually benefits you, that's still not the right thing to do. And one of the sort of criticisms of Kant that you can generally apply is that while his morals are sort of interesting and complex, they're very hard to apply to real life. And this is true of most moral theory. It's difficult to constantly sort of hold yourself to a standard wherein, oh, but if I do this action, it's right. If I do this action, it's wrong. Simply because real life is far more complicated than just a series of right and wrong decisions. And now let's move on to utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is the belief that the actions we should do are what's best for the greatest number of people. And generally speaking, the idea is that it would equally benefit anyone, unless that benefit, of course, comes at the harm of some smaller group. And that's sort of the core idea behind utilitarianism, that even if people get hurt, if more people are helped in about the same amount, then it doesn't matter that anyone got hurt. It's because at the end of the day, you still made things better. And of course, in that, it acknowledges that the harms will occur within a utilitarian framework, that there will be issues that will happen. However, there are some arguments against utilitarianism. For instance, how do you determine what's best for the greatest number of people? While on paper it might seem simple, in reality it's very difficult to sort of figure out how many people will actually benefit from this action and how many people will be hurt by this action. And furthermore, are people obligated to suffer for the sake of the majority? Because if in a utilitarian world where some number of people do have to suffer for the benefit of everyone else, why is it right that they have to suffer and everyone else doesn't have to suffer? And that's sort of where we'll end, because at the end of the day, the closest thing we'll ever have to sort of a moral framework within our society is our laws. So you should always look towards your laws as sort of saying, well, how does this reflect on our society? I've been Jonathan Campbell. This has been Smash Course on Ethics, and thank you for watching.